Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. This is Chachi, again, coming to you from Phoenix and then also a suburb of Denver, Colorado, outside of Castle Rock. Joining me today is a new friend and a fast friend, Miss Abigail G. Manning. Abigail, welcome to the Cape Lead Revolution.
Hi, Chachi. Thank you so much for having me here. And absolutely, we are new, but I feel like good friends already.
Absolutely. I loved exactly how we met. And again, I think this is some of the benefits to social media and everything, to where I had invited Lieutenant Colonel Andy Reese to come hear me speak, just so he and I could talk down when we were at Air Command and Staff College for their LEDX 3.0 event. And then as he went through the list of speakers, he saw your name, instantly connected us up to make sure that you and I had an opportunity to speak and see each other out there. And again, from the moment we met, just great collaboration, great conversation. So extremely thankful for Andy Reese making sure that you and I put each other in our paths. So having said that, if you would mind telling our listeners and viewers just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm so appreciative of Andy as well. Um, I, backing up versus what I do right away, right? So I'm a two-time entrepreneur. I'm a two-time mom, and both of my kids are U.S. Marines. I am an athlete, probably too many sports that I've competed in over my life to share. But I love being outdoors. I love being in nature. I love being on teams. I've sports and being active like that has always been kind of my go-to, one of my strong skill sets of survival and self-care and all of that. And I'm also a voice of, hopefully in the second mission of life that I have here, of helping end all forms of type of unhealthy behaviors and showing people like that they can live thriving lives, and that as individuals that thrive, we can create teams and unity and organizations that thrive. And so my whole content is talking about really hard topics that I've had to learn the hard way, but hopefully helping people learn them a much more easier way and with some laughter along the way. Because as you and I both know, you can go through a lot of hard things, but it's a lot easier if you're able to smile or laugh or joke with somebody else about it, and make sure that even in the midst of it, someone can look at you and make you laugh. Um, that helps me a lot. That was a survival skill of mine, is trying to find the humor in
Right.
everything that I do.
That's amazing. And you know, and so like there are so many people, and I wouldn't begrudge them at all for having persevered and worked their way through some tough situations, and then they put that behind them and they keep it distinctly in their past. But you are kind of keeping it forefront in your present and into the future. So like what was it? What sparked this in you to make this some of your life's work right now? And you know, perhaps what was the catalyst to let people know that, hey, you are a voice for strength and you can help a lot of people through some tough times?
Oh, thank you. I like to think of myself as a voice of strength. I didn't really plan this career. I did, but now looking back, it's hysterical how things align. So when people tell me, this isn't where I want to be, I said, trust me, it's building to something that you don't know yet, but it's going to come as a skill set in your future. So for me, I was a little 8-year-old girl. I grew up and I endured childhood abuse by both my parents. And so from then, when I was standing in front of my little bedroom mirror at 8 years old, I can remember making a vow that this ends with me. But because I didn't understand abuse or manipulations or power and control and all those things, they weren't talked about. So I found myself going to the other end of the spectrum and being married to someone who then financially, all they had to say was, oh, I love you. And that was more than enough for me, right? So that ended because when my money ended, he left, and I had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And there's the story goes on, as you've heard from my talks and things like that, it goes on from there. But what happened is, I didn't know when I was that little 8-year-old girl who was jumping back up, my survival skill was to pop back up and to do well in sports and get accolades and kind of positive reinforcement through that.
Nice.
I didn't know that that was planting the seed for how I would drastically change how I parented my kids. So I was a solo full-time parent, and it's all about do the right thing and be your best. And so I just, the way I talked to my kids, the way I learned along the way, I started building my own curriculum, and I didn't even realize it way back then. And then, as you know, both my kids are in the military. And once they leave, it's not like college. It's not like they have a job down the street. They don't come back home. And it's awful. Empty nest is awful. And so I knew I needed something bigger than my first company. That was the fuel to help me raise my family and build, run my family and my home and all of that. But the passion and the meaning wasn't there to the level of what I needed for a second mission of an empty home and taking all these life lessons. And so it catapulted from there, and I just started telling one person, and then before you know it, you're giving a speech in front of 300 people. And then for me, it was the Senate Majority Leader of Colorado came running over and said, "You're what we're looking for," and hired me from there. And I just keep building and growing. And now that's what I mean. I didn't really plan it, but I would have thought of much smaller than this. So I'm really glad I didn't limit myself. And I
Right.
just kind of went with the flow, and I'm delighted. Now I get to know people like you and talk about causes that are near and dear to me.
See, and that's what I honestly I adore about you is really the purity of your focus, the authenticity in which you're able to deliver a message and just kind of have some self reflection, and then just in a way of trying to help other people out. So as it comes to this, is now you're on part of this second endeavor. You have found this passionate topic that you want to go forward with. What would you say success looks like for you, either long term or even in the near term, for what you want to do and the message that you want to deliver?
Oh, good. So long term, short term, and the message I want to deliver. So for short term, um, it's important to me to be proud of myself because I didn't hear a lot of that, right? And so to own that. So that sounds, I hope it doesn't sound egotistical and vain, because um, I don't consider myself that. And I've never, that's not how I view myself. In fact, I have to work the opposite of working to remove those negative tapes. So success for me is when I can be like, dang, I did really good. Not perfect, not excellent, right? But I'm proud of me, and I'm proud of the where I'm going. And that is very successful to me. Like when I can look myself in the mirror and say, good job, well done. That
Nice.
was, so that's a huge success for me personally. Success for me for, and that would be a short term and long term thing, right? For me. Long term for helping others would be that the language, what I love doing is taking the language that we're afraid to use, or we're scared to use, or we don't use because it's too hard, like, the really hard word like help. I
Okay.
need help, changing the language. And that's what I love, is that I created my own language, my own artwork. So a huge success to me is when I see people say, oh yeah, that was my purple thread. And then they smile, or they make a joke out of something, or they high five me. I've been through childhood abuse too. I know, we've got like a superpower versus the shame and the blame, right?
Right.
Now it's like this, yeah, I see you. Kind of like what you have in the military. When you look at each other, you kind of nod your head and you're like, yeah, I know what you've been through. You know, it's that where people can talk about it. And now instead of putting themselves in the shame and the blame role, they can own it, and they can reach out and help more people and more people and more people.
Absolutely. And so much of the stuff that I end up talking about is, as far as in a leadership, but really just a human context, building that shared and common vernacular, to where
Yes.
if you and I can agree that these are the words that we're going to use, these are the meanings that we're going to apply to these words, it's so much easier to communicate. So the purple thread is something that absolutely blew me away when I sat through your lecture at Maxwell Air Force Base. Can you get into that for us? Because I think it's something important for everybody to hear. Because I think just the understanding, the visual, the metaphor, everything is so impactful for how we can help ourselves get through this.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And thank you for like listening in and giving me your feedback and everything on that day. That was fantastic. So purple threads is an idea I came up with. So I have to make sense, and I have to make light of things, right? Like, and I have to have it be visual. So purple thread is something, so think of PTs, purple thread. So it's a personal thought that creates your personal triggers that you have to psychologically and physically kind of pull out of you. And the key to all of this is those purple threads typically come from a past trauma. And we all have had some form of trauma. Some are large, some are small, some have had 20 little ones, some have had one huge one. They can be growing up in the foster care, in poverty, having a buddy that died, seeing your mom fight cancer, going through abuse, violence. Um, there's so many different forms of trauma that we have all seen it. And witnessing trauma is really hard on our bodies and minds, as much as people say, well, I just saw it, it didn't happen to me. Well, there is trauma in witnessing trauma, right?
Absolutely.
So what happens is that if you have these woven in from an early age or later, or one person or 10 people, depends on all these different factors, those are the number of purple threads you have woven inside of you that you think the world can see. Right? On the outside, they can't see it. You look successful. You look confident. You're like a really good looking guy, Chachi, right? Like what could be wrong with his world? And what we realize is that everybody has purple threads inside of them. And it's our job to be self-aware what those are. And then self-ownership is the fun task, fun,
Fun.
of pulling them out. And when you've had as many purple threads woven into you over the course of your life that I had, you really believe them to be true. You really believe these lies and unworthy misstatements of I am not, I'm not a good person. People don't like me. I'm not smart. I'm not talented. I'm never going to make it in the world. I'm definitely not good looking. Whatever those unworthiness tapes are that each and every single one of us have, if we can help each other say, Chachi, I'm really struggling with this one. Then when you watch me and you see me limiting myself based on that purple thread, that lie, you can help me remove it. Or you can call me out on it. And you can say, Abigail, that's your purple thread, man. You got to take care of it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that is mine. It's mine to own. And that's that self-ownership part of it. And then when we can do that, I can't be manipulated. If you think like a marionette, you can't be manipulated by somebody else pulling on those purple threads, right? So that's the whole form of manipulations and abuse is they find your weakness, they find your unworthiness statement, and they just pull and tweak and then rebraid it in, and then they unbraid it. And all I want to do is love you. I really care about you, right? And so you feel relaxed, and then they weave those purple threads and pull on them again. So that's how the cycles of abuse, when people can't understand why they continue. It's kind of an easy way of explaining it. And yeah, I have some artwork on it, but.
See, I love everything about that answer. And I would say realistically for me, as far as dealing with what I would relatively consider minor amounts of some post-traumatic stress, just from deployments and some of the things that I've been. And, but again, like common dude stuff. Oh, I have buddies who have it way worse. So what do I have to complain about? So there's even things like that for me that it took me a long time to even go talk to one person about things like that. But I really do like the understanding of having that metaphor there of these purple threads that, like, because you see it, if you look down, you have a thread, you want to, you absolutely want to get rid of it. But, until you see it, you don't know it's there.
Exactly. I haven't thought of it that way. That's a great analogy. Yeah, absolutely. And then once you see it, you do want to start pulling them out. And if you've had a ton of them, be gentle to yourself. This is a really stressful time with the virus. And so all of us are being triggered a little bit more than what we realize with the stress and the fear and the doubt and the anxiety that we can feel. And so if you have a couple different people pulling on it, it's quick to lose your temper or quick to feel sad and doom and gloom. And so be gentle with yourself during these really challenging times when we're kind of put through some extra stressors, emotionally, isolation, financially, all of that, and know your purple thread. So even today, my desk was overflowing with, okay, how am I going to switch, right? I'm doing 3 workshops stopped overnight. That's income overnight gone. And I know myself. And so when my purple threads are getting pulled, I can go into that overwhelm and that self-doubt. And then I can hear if I stop and get really quiet. So I did. I went outside. I stood in the sunshine. I said, okay, whose voice am I hearing? I could hear my mother's voice so loud and clear about, all the unworthiness statements, and you're stupid and you're dumb and people don't like you. And really, you think you can run a company. When the last times I chatted with her on the phone, it was Christmas Day. And she said to me, it's shocking that you've been able to run a company. Now, keep in mind, I had my company for 23 years. I've raised 2 kids by myself. for 23 years. It's shocking. And so those are those purple threads that get woven in. So as I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, how am I going to adjust? I've already been paid to do a webinar next week by sponsors. Like, it's already happening. But that fear and that doubt can sneak in really fast. But when I recognize it as a purple thread, I pull it out. I'm like, yeah, bye-bye. Off you go. You're not welcome here.
Nice, nice. So for people out there who, and again, I just love the metaphor. Just as I'm sitting here, you talking is just, hey, kind of be careful, because it's one of those. There may be people out there whose like whole wardrobe is purple. That you keep pulling these threads, you could end up naked, and how vulnerable would that be? As far as trying to unravel all that. So that's absolutely huge. So for the people who are having to endure this, for number one, just identifying a purple thread, that has to be painful. But what are some of those first steps that you would offer up to anybody, just saying, hey, if you're gonna if you're gonna persevere, if you're gonna grow, survive, thrive, put this behind you, find strength through all this, what are some of the opening things that you would recommend to anybody to help them find success?
So first and foremost, I would say, where do you feel it in your body? So if people want to Google somatic therapy, it's a wonderful, wonderful therapy. There's so many different modalities out there. So number one is have hope, because there's lots of different options out there that you can have about healing and everything. So one is somatic therapy, is about where it is woven into your body. Where do you feel that energy? I don't know if you can hear my dog, but as we're working from out of home, so I
Yeah,
had some.
this is absolutely life. The internet will probably glitch out. Dogs will bark. Mailman will
There
knock
we
on
go.
the door.
I'm
We
like,
got this.
I'm like looking around because my friend came over to get the dog, so it wouldn't bark. And of course, my dog is now being all protective and like, I'm like, okay, well, that didn't work as well as I thought. And that's part of the purple threads, right?
You
You
bet.
just go on. And that's life, and it's okay. And even though I wanted it to look wonderful and so professional and all of that, and we have to remember that. And that's part of finding that humor for yourself and for other people. Um, and so now my brain has forgotten where we were going.
We were talking about the first steps for
Oh,
that
thank
you
you.
offer to anybody. You talked about somatic therapy, and you talked about hope.
Yes, thank you so much. So somatic therapy is the first step of doing it. Is where do you feel it in your body? Your body will not lie to you. So start being aware of your body. Are you carrying your shoulders up tight? Is your jaw tense? Are you feeling sick to your stomach? Are your legs kind of shaking? And then that's kind of a first warning sign that our body gives us that something, fight, flight, or freeze. I'm in an agitated state. And then you have to sit and say, okay, why? I'm about to get on the phone. Who am I calling? Why do I feel sick to my stomach? Like, start doing that background thinking, or keep a journal near you and ask yourself. So many times people use the word should. I should have known better. Okay, write that down, right? And then say, why should I have known better? I did everything I possibly could have. I educated myself in every way. What, am I supposed to be an expert in everything? No. Give yourself grace and space. And then start writing those things down that you see, and you'll start seeing a pattern. We're all really smart. We'll see a pattern. And then you can ask other people who are close to you, what do you see? My kids are quick to say, you get overwhelmed, and I know some people get angry, and some people, okay, well, those are just warning signs. It's okay. There's no right or wrong. I mean, it's kind of almost like two extremes. Some people will overachieve and some people will underachieve. Some people will be afraid of success. Some people will be afraid of failure. Right? So what are those thoughts? And then you do the work to see what they were tied to. Who said that? What experience in your life told you that? You washed out of some program in the military? Okay, well, that doesn't mean you're weak, right? That's a lie. So what is the truth in that? The truth it is, I washed out in that program, so then I went into a different one, and man, I really excelled there. Okay, well, that's fantastic. You found your strengths and you readjusted. That's a good thing.
It put you on a different path. That wasn't your path. You're on a new path. And this, I mean, I'm a huge believer in Steve Jobs, and he explains to people, he's like, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backward. But you don't know what dots lie ahead of you. And so I really appreciate that. And so, yeah, that's phenomenal advice for anybody out there. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then own them. And
Yeah.
then own them, because then that's how we don't get triggered by other people. That's why someone can come up to you and say something. Maybe it's even a joke or that went kind of bad, or maybe something, and you can calmly, without your stomach getting sick to a thing or your fist getting into a punching, ready to fight. You can address it. You can identify it, and you can say that's not mine to own.
So is there anything in regards to this that you try and do for yourself on a daily basis to help with the purple threads or somatic therapy? Anything along those lines? Do you have a daily regimen that maybe helps you out with this a little bit?
Oh, great. I love that. So you don't know this, but that's my third step. So the
Okay.
first step is self-awareness, right? And then the second is self-ownership, and that's an ongoing process. And the last one is self-commitment. And I use self-commitment more than the word self-care. And here's why. Self-care sounds kind of fluffy to me. I'm used to always putting everybody else's needs first. So I have programmed myself to put my needs at the bottom. And so there's no time for self care. But you tell me an oath, a promise, a commitment. Oh, yeah, I'm there. That's why I love being on teams, because if I'm just going to go running for myself, I may or may not necessarily make it out there. I might work longer. But if I'm on a team and we're going to compete, and we were, a triathlon team that trained together for 5 years, oh yeah, I'm going to be there. Right. So a self commitment to me is to do those different things. It's a promise to myself to do self care, to have self love. And it's a commitment. And like you said, you need to make daily steps for it. So I have my little routines in the morning. I always pour a wonderful cup of coffee out of a mug from usually some vacation or trip. I have a beautiful antique couch that I love to sit on. And I open up the curtains and I get to see the mountains. And I sit down and I say, okay, what is it I'm supposed to learn today? And I just sit quietly. And that is my way of mindfulness or meditation. But I really just sit quietly and center myself for the day, kind of just wait for thoughts to come in, maybe do some breathing exercises. And I'll tell you, every single day that I do that, it is such a better day for me. And then the other days I'm like, I don't need to do that. Then things start going cattywampus. So that's one of them. And then really honestly being outside, standing in the sunshine. I love trail running. So my self-care a lot of times is grab my dog and we'll go trail running. And that at sunset especially is like one of my absolute favorite times to go. So those are some of my self-care things that I do. How about you?
So very interesting. You asked that. So I live in like central Phoenix, and inside central Phoenix, there's some they're not the mountains like Colorado mountains, but they have some significant rock mountains there.
Oh yeah.
So this morning did a hike up the mountain. So 1,000 foot elevation gain through some not rough terrain because there's a trail, but loose terrain and jagged terrain and stuff. So got up there on top of the mountain to watch the sunrise and
Oh,
360 degree of the Valley of Phoenix. And so just really enjoying that. And one of the things that I've been taught in recent years, and I mentioned it in nearly every single video podcast that I do here, is just go out and getting oxygen and doing that mindfulness piece and making sure that I'm putting on my oxygen mask first before I help the person next to me, because I need to be the best Tim Pachasa I can first and the best Chachi that I can present to the world. And if I'm not right with me, how I'm going to be right for anybody else in the entire world. And so for me, it's going on those hikes, it's playing with my kids, it's cooking for them at night, being on the grill, enjoying our pool in the backyard, and just the last 2 years of my career I spent away from my family, and
hmm.
so being back with them, I'm just still loving every single second of it and not taking any of it for granted. It's really amazing.
I love that. I love your commitment to your family and how you talk about them and you glow when you do. It's beautiful. It's really wonderful. And, that was a big decision. That was a brave decision for you to make and you and your family to create together. And I admire that. And so a lot of people, when you were talking earlier about success, each of us have to define what's success. So I grew up with a father who was raised very, very poor, who made a ton of money and died very wealthy, and there was no funeral, there was no service, there were no friends, there was nothing. So for a lot of people, I grew up in an area where you had to like present yourself perfect all the time, right? that wasn't success to me. Like, I feel very at home here in Colorado because it's very natural. Like, success can be so many different definitions and so many different things, and it's not the car necessarily that you drive. It's not, like, you have this great stellar career, amazing career ahead of you, and you're like, I did it, that was my success, and now my success looks like this. And that's another thing we can do, is pivot and change. So in this a virus situation, we can pivot and change. Can be honestly a great opportunity. If you look at it as a tragedy, like, I don't look at myself as a victim, and I don't look at myself as a survivor. I just don't define myself that way. Have I been through those circumstances? Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. Right. But I'm a thriver. And that's how I want to look at myself. And so what happens is, when you define yourself in a way, I'm a family man, I'm a thriver, I'm a whatever, you start focusing on that, right? And you start saying, that's more and more important to me. That's my definition of success. Because otherwise we can go around and we can chase all these other dreams. And at the end of the day, do we feel proud of who we are? Do we feel successful? And if I own my own purple threads, I don't care if someone says, well, wow, she could have lived in a bigger house, or she should have impacted more people, right? I know what I'm doing, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm always striving to be better. And if a roadblock comes up, I don't think, oh gosh. It's kind of like that role versus identity. And I get to work a lot with military, which I love. I love working with military. And there's a hard transition when you leave that. And I think you've done a really phenomenal job of transitioning it, the role and identity, and what is success, and how I can have success now in a whole new way. And that's something I'm happy. I've had to jump over the burdens of, like, hurdles rather, of where I was successful. And now I'm starting over again, and I can feel like a loser, right?
Right.
Like, it's easy to be like, what did I do? And now this thing, and like, how am I going to pay my mortgage? And I could have stayed over here where it was safe. Well, not if I want to be successful, not if I want to be happy. So take challenges and look at obstacles as opportunities, and redefine yourself. This is a great time to sit down and figure out those purple threads. We have more time. We're at home.
Absolutely.
And and like, what's irritating you? Well, maybe that's part of what you need to look at. Maybe we could all become stronger individuals during this time.
And it's funny you bring up the whole military aspect of things, because there's such a great opportunity to define yourself for whatever title and or role that you have. Because I could have been a command chief, or I could have been a chief, or I could have been a TAC-P, which is my Air Force career field. I could have been a JTAC, which was my certification to call in airstrikes. I could have done all those things. And part of the big reason that I wanted to retire was I realized that, I'm very, very proud of all those accomplishments and everything that I did. But at the end of the day, the only title that I wanted was dad. And like, none of that pushed me towards dad. It was taking me away from dad. That's when I was like, okay, I quit. Like, I've done this. Has been a good nearly 25 years, and it's time just for me to go out and be dad. And so I think kind of to your point is, take caution in how you are labeling yourself, and how you are measuring what's important. I think that's a super powerful message, that people shouldn't define themselves by what they do, because who they are is something completely different.
Right. And I think there might be a minor adjustment, because I've heard you talk about your wife. So the two titles I think you wanted is dad.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because that's like your first thing you're like glow and talk about, right? And then the kids are right behind it. So, and we can wear multiple hats. That's the beautiful thing, right? So being a great dad is something I would have loved for my father and people of his generation to have been taught. And I wish that my kids had had a great dad, right? So my goal is that by my time my grandkids are born, you are going to be the norm.
I hope
You
so.
are going to be the norm. A man who's like, I love my wife. I love my kids. I love being in this position. I would give up anything to really focus on them and be there behind the grill. And then you do it. That's the world that I'm trying to help build, is where we have to have the financial successes, and we have to have the companies and the mission and the military and all of that. But we can also wear other hats while we do that. And then making sure we're filling our own tanks up with happiness. You were starting to talk about the oxygen, and your kids do that. And going up and seeing the sunrise, if that's it. Like, I would rather be sleeping when the sun is coming up. But I'll stay up all night long. But that sunrise,
Yeah,
man.
I can't stay up late. I'm definitely a morning person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So I'll tell you what. Well, with that, we will take it to our first break. So everybody, stay tuned, stay in place, and we will back here after this quick break with Abigail G. Manning. We'll be right back. Greetings. Welcome back from break. We are here with Abigail G. Manning. And Abigail, we were talking a lot about my family prior to going into break, but man, like, what about yours? Talk about being a military mother with two kids there, and so explain a little bit about that. That has to be trying, and then also, to go along with that. Why did I just my mind went blank? Hold on a sec.
That's okay.
Yeah, what do they do?
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happens.
yeah. We're blank. All right, so we'll start this intro over. All right, blah blah blah. All right, in 3, 2, 1. All right, greetings. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. We are back from break here with Abigail G. Manning. And Abigail, before we went on break, we were talking a lot about my family and my oxygen and what kind of pushes me to find success and be a better human being. And you've already mentioned your kids, both Marines. I can only imagine how trying that is. But what do you think of their military service? And also, what do your children think of this new path that you have put yourself on?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Like any proud parent, I love talking about my kids. So, my daughter just recently, as you guys say, separated. And so I'm so proud of her. She was HMX-1. So for those that don't know, that's the presidential helicopter with Marine One. So she was part of that security squadron and everything. So I love the stories that have grown from her going into the Marines and why she chose the Marines and everything like that and everything she got out of it. It was the world's best experience for her from my perspective as a mom. Now, I fought it tooth and nail. As a mom, I wanted her to go to like librarian school, right? Like become a librarian. Don't like, and she fought me. I mean, like I bribed her with a truck and a horse. Like and that was the only thing. One night she was like, "You okay, mom?" And the next day she's like, "Nope, I'm going in." And it really gave her everything she needed. It ripped out every purple thread. Boot camp will do that to you, I guess, and really remove those purple threads. And she became this person that's always been inside of her. And when she excelled with them, it was absolutely wonderful. And because of her, I've been able to go to Camp David, and I was in the Oval Office, and I got all these incredible insights and experiences behind the scenes. And so it's been a huge, huge benefit for her, and launched her into a new career with a big government undisclosed name agency um, and everything. So it's been really wonderful to watch her progression in such a short amount of time. And for my son, it was fantastic too. My son is current active duty. His deployment just got canceled because of the virus and everything. But I've watched the same amount of growth and incredible confidence in him. And so I have great pride that both my kids chose to protect and honor and serve our country and our fellow citizens. So that's been really fun for me to see how a mature and adult and like talk about self-aware and self-ownership and everything. Like it's been a really fun delight to watch. And yeah, they're really proud. They're proud of their mom, and they also remind me. They also put me in my place. Uh,
Keep you humble.
right? Yeah. So, and they make me laugh when I need to laugh. They give me hope when I need to hope. And the other day, when all of this hit and my instant income and projected income just completely canceled, fear and doubt and stress sneak in. They sneak into all of us very quickly. And it's just a matter of when you've been in PTS, I call it the pit. And so the goal is that when you see yourself in the pit or falling in the pit, one, how deep is it now? And two, how quickly do you get back out of it? Right? So now I saw myself kind of sliding towards the edge of the pit, kind of grabbing onto the edge. And so I did some of my self-care. I called people, I reached out to people. My son has an incredible knack for making me laugh at the moment. So I assumed he was going to, tell me one of my things like, "Mom, don't cry. You're really ugly when you cry." Like, that always makes me laugh because he means it too. And he came up with this thing, and I said, "Riley, where did that come from? He goes, Mom, that's what you taught me. So he was really, really dyslexic. And he said, Mom, I don't believe in you. He's like, anybody could believe in you. I know in you. When I was dyslexic and I couldn't read for my second grade, like a kindergartner can read, you didn't say, I believe you're going to read, kiddo. You said, I know you can read. I know you are brilliant. I know we haven't figured out how to get that to happen in the line yet, but I know it. Just like I know we're going to get through this crisis. I know that we're going to get through these stresses. I know it. And how long are we going to stay in the pit, or how much are we going to try to bounce back out and do proactive things for our self-care and for the care of those around us? And so my kids are really proud. They're definitely cheering me on. They're like, keep going, Mom, keep going. I'm like, okay, I'm taking my marching orders from them. So it's fun to kind of see the roles being reversed a little bit.
That's awesome. Like that is really, really awesome. And I'm just glad that this has become a family affair, and that, not only are you doing what you love, but it's paid off dividends for your kids. And now those dividends for your children are paying dividends for you. And that's absolutely huge. And again, I think moving on to the next kind of topic, being a little bit remiss if we didn't talk about the virus, going on right now with COVID-19 and everything, and the uncertainty and the fear and everything else. And I know so close to you, being on the outskirts of Castle Rock, which is, for lack of a better term, halfway between Colorado Springs and Denver. But down in Colorado Springs, United States Air Force Academy, Thursday and Friday, it looks like they had 2 apparent suicides. And so that just, number one, breaks my heart, and number two, scares me a whole lot for these uncertain times and all the different stress that people may be experiencing, not knowing how to go through. So what are some of the things that maybe you have learned that you can help us out with to cope with what could be a bad epidemic of just suicide, and not even talking about the virus possibly?
Right. The death count from that.
Absolutely.
So one, and we kind of started the conversation this way, Chachi, is like, have grace and space for yourself, right? So this is a stressful time. This is a harder time. There are some legitimate fears out there, right? And so just acknowledging them, like those purple threads, and saying, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not being like crying 1 minute and like totally feeling like this is great, and then the next moment the world's gonna end. Like, it's okay. Just take some big breaths, do some of those self-care, watch the sunrise or sunset, do your exercise, do whatever, reach out to people, stay connected, and make sure you're doing positive steps to protect yourself, and recognizing those stress and fears. Because here's what happens. It's called the adverse spiral. And it starts off with little things like stress, fear, self-doubt, unworthiness, things that are pretty small, and so we don't act on them. We kind of blow them off. We ignore them. But what happens is it's a slippery slope. So then that slides to depression. And when you don't like feeling depressed, you go to addictions, or you want to numb out. So you do an addiction either to feel up or to numb it down, to stop feeling so much. And then when you're in addictions, and addictions to me is when something has more control over you than you have over it. So during this time, I've heard a lot of people panic. They closed the liquor stores here in Colorado for 3 hours in Denver, and people panicked. They left work. The lines were out, and then they reinstated it. Fine, I guess we need our alcohol. So like, be aware of that. If you're starting to drink every single night, ask yourself, okay, the next 3 nights I'm not going to drink. Like, prove that you don't have an addiction to yourself. And then what happens if you have the addictions? It can slide to cycles of abuse and PTS, and then ultimately at the bottom is thoughts of suicide. And the farther down the spiral that you go, the more shame, blame, judgment, and isolation. Those are the commonalities in all of those, where people start sinking lower and lower. And when you start doing that, you not only feel like think other people are thinking that about you, but worse, you feel that way about yourself. Right? So even though we're isolated, that's really hard for a lot of us. And so the isolation, you can start saying, what's wrong with me? Why am I struggling so much? All those shame and blame, like I should be doing better, right? I'm not in the epicenter of it. I am not, that type of thing. And if you are, oh my gosh, of course you're feeling these things. Of course you're stressed out. That's to be expected. And that's one of the biggest things I tell people. It's like, it's to be expected. You've been to war. It's to be expected that you have some outcomes. And that's okay. Now that we can identify them, let's address them and move on, right? Let's give you the skills. Let's give you the abilities. Like, there's so many different modalities out there. that we can use. So if you go to the VA, for example, in the military, and the pills don't work, because that's kind of the first line of attack, right? Like, yeah, throw some
Mhm.
pills at them. So just keep in mind there's all these different options. So I think for me, the hope of all of this to get out of the adverse spiral is twofold. One is unity. We need each other. And I'm actually kind of hoping that this crisis will help each other see how much we really, truly need each other and how much we're counting on each other. So I talk about always building 3 bridges. And you need 3 contact people that you can go to at any given time, because one person might be having enough crisis of their own. One you might feel like, I go to all the time, I don't want to bother them again. And then also ask yourself, who am I the 3 bridges to, right? Who knows that they can reach me at any time? Because when you're talking about those cadets that died by suicide, or we believe might have, according to the news, um, they need to know that they can reach out to different people. Take the stigma away from it. Take the shame and the blame and the judgment of having those conversations of, I feel down, I feel depressed. And that's where I work on changing the language. You can just say, hey, I don't feel like me. I'm having a hard time getting out of bed,
You bet.
right? And those are things to be expected right now. We're working in isolation. We have fear and doubt. That's okay. But it's not okay to keep it to yourself. Tell somebody, and then work on a plan. Have a strategy, have a vision. Know that you're going to take that hike. Know you're going to sit on the couch with your coffee. Have a plan, and then tell somebody, because that last step is self-commitment, right? Write it down, check it off the list every single day, or tell somebody else so that you can be held accountable and they can hold you accountable too.
So I really like the concept of having those 3 bridges, building 3 of those, so you always have somebody to go to. And that I'm not looking for names, right? But as far as your 3 bridges, who would they be? Because there's probably a distinct reason why these people are your bridges. So I'm probably looking for more of the character traits that these people embody, rather than names or anything. If you want to, by all means, and give them a quick little shout out on the podcast, whatever. But who are your bridges?
Oh, I love it. Bridges are people that I trust. And I've always been saying, like, you build bridges before you need them, right? So in a crisis, all of a sudden everybody can need who you are, but who are you fostering during the good times? Not just the times where you need somebody, but who are you building and developing and reinforcing as a strong structural bridge that you can count on all the time, right? Who are you spending time with? Who are you connecting with? Who are you reaching out to? Who are you following up with? Right? So those are the strong bridges. So I've done that over my life. And so for me, we've talked about my kids. My kids are one of my bridges and I'm one of theirs. That's what a family does, in my opinion. And you have those conversations. You ask people point blank questions. You know them so well, you can tell without even seeing their face. Like, I can tell over the phone how long the pause is. And I'm like, you can tell me anything. And then, and wait. And set a tone of kindness, set a tone of respect, set the tone of, I truly do care. And so I need a couple different bridges. I need someone who can just make me laugh, right? Like,
Sure.
okay, I know I'm struggling. I know I'm having a hard time. Could you just, like, what jokes do you have? What video can you send me? And I've done this, and they're like, okay, let's get on YouTube. Oh, Google this one. And then before you know it, we're laughing, because that's all I really needed. I just needed to get through that moment. So laughter is one. Someone I really admire for advice. They could be kind of stodgy. They can be not funny, but I really trust their judgment. I really respect their insights. I know they're good at putting pieces together, um, and going to that person. I need someone who's optimistic, who's hopeful, who's not Pollyann, but, okay, what else have you tried? Here are some other options. So in this time of financial struggle, I had a friend who did that. It was like, okay, a lot of mortgage companies are doing a 90-day hold. Okay, you could get a small business loan to cover the thing. Okay, I know you don't want to do this, but there are things called credit cards. And most people have credit card debt, and they help brainstorm all these different options of, depending on if it goes X number of days or X number of months, here's a battle plan. And I was like, okay, you know what? You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. So that was my financial friend who's really smart at brainstorming about that. So maybe look at what your weaknesses are and look for strength in that. Look for someone who's strong in that you respect. But I think the key is finding people that you respect and you trust. They care about you. They have your best interest at heart.
So, and just writing down trust, laugh, advice, optimism. If I'm going to build one of my perfect confidants, right, they would absolutely personify and embody all four of those concepts. And it's funny, as you're going through this, I go back to my CAPE concept, and I talk about this is, if we want to have these conversations, is number one, figure out what you care about. Number two, figure out how well you're aligned to meet and achieve what you care about. Number three, seek outside perspective. Talk to somebody else. So this methodology forces you to go outside of your internal understanding and talk to other people. And then lastly, end it with a solid expectation, not an assumption, not an anticipation, but a true expectation for how you understand this situation is either going to resolve itself or how it's going to play out. Or to bare minimum, there's value added understanding that you don't have an expectation to where maybe it is that anticipation or at very worst an assumption. So the fact that you are intuitively having these conversations with your people, like, warms my heart to a level I can't even begin to imagine. So thank you for doing that just instinctively.
Well, thank you, because I've never been asked that question before, and that was a really great exercise. Okay, what is it? What? And that was very good detail. Like, have people walk away with, okay, action steps they can take. So no wonder I consider you such a good friend. I feel like we're kindred spirits. Like the CAPE, I love that. I love all of those steps, and I love that the expectations at the end sounded like, to me, is like next steps.
You bet.
What are we, and that's that accountability buddy that I would talk about, right? Like, what are the expectations? Where are you going? What timeline? When are you going to have that done by? What would that look like? Get to the nitty gritty specifics. And I think that's what we miss sometimes in the details of each other's lives, is get down to the nitty gritty details. Get down to, is that important to you? Is grilling important to you in the backyard? Like, okay, well then how many times this week are you doing it? Oh, well, I haven't this week. Oh, no.
What gets measured gets done.
Yes.
You're doing it.
Yes, because then otherwise time goes by and then we forget, or it slides by, or we think we're, I grilled with my family, for example, just using that as an example, right? If we can get to the details of it. And you've always talked about teaching our kids how to grill. Have you done that yet? You were going to make a family secret sauce, right, for your famous ribs. Have you done that yet? And then people go, oh, that person cares about me. They're following up. They really know me. They know what's important to me, specifically to me. And then when you don't make that secret family barbecue sauce, I maybe could say, hey, Chachi, I know you got a purple thread about you're not a good cook. People told you that. But you know what? That's how you become a good cook. You just make a bunch of different recipes. You might throw out 90% of them. But, and then you're like, I feel seen.
There's a, obviously had plenty of time, and I'm trying to work to get back in shape. So I've been watching a lot of the CrossFit movies and videos that they've put out, and Matt Fraser, the reigning champion, 4-time, champion, he has a phenomenal quote, because they're talking about this workout came in and this is really right in his competition's wheelhouse. And he's like, yeah, he goes, this is not in my wheelhouse. He goes, but I work every single day to not have a wheelhouse. And so really trying to perfect all those different things. And so I think, if we have the presence of mind to do so, I think we can take all these weaknesses as they're not weaknesses, they're just challenges to be awesome, and then move forward accordingly. And that's what I think I'm hearing from you.
Well, yes, but that's what you just said. And that's what, it's a universal theme, right? And that's what's so great. And that's why we can connect so well with one another. And I've watched on Netflix him and his story and how amazing he is. And I love that. It's the same. That's why we're all kind of wanting the same thing. And so find a language that works for you. Right? So if a language doesn't work for you, like, hey, I feel depressed or I feel weak, that language doesn't work for me either, then it's not my wheelhouse, or I'm building that skill set or something. And so I love that. And by the way, you are already, I'm sure you're in fabulous shape, but to get in shape, you don't watch people working out, Chachi.
Yeah, it's fair. Fair. That's a phenomenal point that all my friends watching this now are now going to make fun of me. I sit there with donuts and bonbons watching CrossFit, like, man, this workout's amazing.
Can I have another Pop-Tart, honey?
which is why I have to take those videos on top of the mountain to show them, hey, I'm actually doing stuff, rather
There
than
you
just
go.
watching it on TV. But I do have to provide proof.
And I love that we can joke, right? Because it's important. But the real key of this is like what you think and what you say doesn't mean anything until you do it. You got
Absolutely.
to do it. So in the world of abuse, one of the ways I help people see manipulations and harassment, everything is, do their actions match their words? You don't have to understand gaslighting and moving the goalposts and and normalizing. You don't have to understand those. All you have to understand is consistently, do their actions match their words? And
And
so,
that, you bet. And I hear it all the time, but in the military, we're here expressed as the say do gap, right? If you say
oh,
you're going to do it versus you say you're going to do something and then do you do that, what is that gap? Like, what is that delta? So this say do gap is becoming more and more prevalent throughout military circles, which is where I've heard it. And I absolutely love that concept.
I love that. I want to borrow that if I can. Hey, military, can I borrow that?
By all means.
And again, it kind of goes back to that pit of PTS. Like, how big is that gap between? How deep is that pit? Do you say it and then you go do it, or is it you say it and 3 years later you do it? You write the book,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and that's absolutely me. I've been saying I've been going to write books for 7 years. Haven't done it, so just did two of them in the past week or so. But again, it's one of those what gets measured gets done, and that indecision is a decision. And
Yes.
I think people need to realize a lot of these things. And one of the things that you had brought up is as you're talking to somebody on the phone, I'm absolutely embarrassed to say that for if you answer the phone with a smile on your face, the person on the other line will hear it. I'm a huge believer in that concept. But as you kind of alluded to, I've never thought of the antithesis of that is that someone will hear the sadness too. And I absolutely know that. And I've never focused on that once. I think that's relatively pathetic because I've never tried to tie those concepts together.
I love what you have to say, except for the end about it being pathetic.
Well, yeah, fair, yeah, fair. But everyone's their own harshest critic, right? So
Right.
obviously, I have work to do. you know,
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful insight that you saw that in yourself. You just recognize that. So without shame, blame, or judgment, right? I think that's fabulous that you made that recognition. And I also think, like, when I talk to my son, he has a very deep voice. He's very logical. He's very consistent. He listens 10 times longer than he talks. And I have to keep that in my mind too, because otherwise I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you like, he's okay. Think about it. He gets up at 5:30 in the morning at the latest and he's PTing. And then he goes and does a full-time job where his brain, I mean, he's Intel. And so his brain is going and going and going. And then he's got to walk 1 mile each way to the mess hall, to eat some wonderful food. And he actually says it's not too bad.
the dining facilities in the past 20 years have come a long way.
I'm sure they have. I'm sure they have. I don't know. Yeah.
So with this, as we're kind of drawing to a natural conclusion for this hour, I kind of want our viewers and listeners to know a little bit about you, and who are some of the, I don't want to say who, right, as if it's a person, but what are some of the things that you go to? Do you have favorite books? Do you have favorite podcasts? Do you have favorite movies? Do you have favorite people that you follow or talk to on social media? Is there anybody or anything out there that is inspiring you and helping shape you as a phenomenal human being these days?
Oh, well, there's definitely things that are inspiring me all the time. So conversations like with you that we had, that connection and that, wow, he cares. And he gave insights, and the purple thread example that I used where people act tactile and actually did it. Authentic relationships, authentic conversations, meaningful relationships with people really impact me, where it's up close and personal and I get to watch it. We have an elderly guy in the neighborhood that a couple of us check in on, and I really love that heart, right? It's up close and it's personal. From a distance, there's so many great people who've written books and things like that. Brene Brown is one of them. Simon Sinek is another one of them. But there's also obscure ones that are out there that I love. You know, The Four Agreements, which is an oldie but goodie. His son wrote a sequel to it that I just finished, and I can't think of the name of it. Like, I can't remember what the name is. I just finished it, and I'm one of those people. I write in it, I highlight it, I dog-ear it, you know, all that kind of stuff. So people of inspiration, people of hope, people that are able to stand on the edge and speak their truth. I mean, there's so many that if someone wants to contact you or follow up and contact me, I'm happy to prepare a list, because I haven't done that. And that would be a really good exercise.
Awesome. So I will definitely be in touch. I'm kind of compiling some of that stuff for, again, like kind of online talk that I'm giving on Friday, just to give people, hey, here's some quick little things that you can do simply on a daily basis to make you that be willing to share with the world, to give us a little insight about who Abigail G. Manning is.
Well, I was kind of smirking because we were talking about the food at the mess hall. Okay, all right, fine. The reason why the food at a Marine mess hall, or whatever it's really called, is not so bad is because of how I raise my kids and how I don't cook, and I'm awful. I'm awful at it. I am so bad. So both of my kids are like, Mom, the food is good. And one of the stories that I remember they came back with was I was trying really hard because I can't stand cooking meat. And, you know, I was busy. I was running a full-time company. I was raising 2 kids. I was at every single one of their events. I was helping with tutoring. I was, you know, cleaning a house. I was busy. And I grew up with the kitchen being an unsafe place to be, and an unfun place to be, and a physically and emotionally unhealthy place to be. So you didn't hang out in the kitchen. I wasn't taught how to cook, you know, and I was always like, my anxiety level goes up in the kitchen, right? So I've worked really hard at that. So I was really proud of myself that I developed this recipe. It's called Mexican lasagna, and it was really healthy. It had, you know, ground turkey, it had cottage cheese in it, it had corn, it had, you know, like corn tortillas and stuff. And I was so proud, and I'd make it every Friday, and the kids would devour it. And I just felt like, this is one thing I can cook. This is one thing I'm really good at in the kitchen. So when my kids were in high school, they finally confessed. They're like, Mom, please don't ever make this again. Why? They're like, it's awful. It is so awful. But you eat it. And they're like, because we're starving. We're starving. So just this week, I asked my son, you know, like, you know, he was home for his pre-deployment leave, which didn't end up happening for his deployment because of the virus. But one of the things I said was like, oh, I'll make Mexican lasagna. And he just started, we both laughed so hard. So yeah, I'm awful, 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 awful in the kitchen. And that's okay. Can you imagine that MRE is better than your mom's cooking?
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
That's talent.
So how about this? So we'll end the question on a positive note, is that this is always, I learned this during an executive transition class that they give members when they're leaving the military, and went to this outplacement program. And the lady there had a phenomenal question to ask everybody how well they were prepared to go into civilian life and everything. And she asked, what would you do in life if money were no object and you knew you could not fail?
All right. Well, I would end all forms of the adverse spiral. I would absolutely do that. It breaks my heart when I hear of suicides. I've had friends who've had suicide in their families, and how detrimental that's been to their children, especially, but them as spouses. So that would be the serious note thing, right? So, and that would be, talking about success, man, that would, overjoyed heart, yes. On a silly note, I would love to be able to sing and stand on a stage and sing. I'm probably worse at singing than I am at cooking. So for other people, they're like, really, that's what you'd want to do? I'm like, yeah, because it seems so out of my ability at this current moment in time. Not that I can't take singing lessons someday, but I think on a silly, joyful note, like if I knew I could not fail, I would love to stand, as hokey as it sounds, because I am kind of sappy, and stand in front of a huge stadium and sing the national anthem.
That
That
is
would be
amazing.
cool.
That is hugely amazing. Um, Abigail, thank you so much for your time being on this podcast. Thank you for everything that we do. I've already done a recap of how we can understand CAPE through everything that you shared and some comments, anything that you would like to share with us. But please specifically tell us how we can find you and get a hold of you and learn more from you, even past this podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're so kind. And I know that our messages align very, very much. So I would love for people to find out more information exactly about what you do. Dive into the details. Find out more about what, what amazing things you're doing. And I can't wait to read your books because I know they're coming out that, I know you have it in you. So I can't wait for that. And people can reach me obviously through you, or they can reach me at abigailgmanning.com, or email me at abigailgmanning.com. And I really do love hearing from people, and I truly do care about people. So I encourage anyone to reach out with, a suggestion, a recommendation. Yeah, here's a thing you can tweak, and also here's some resources. I'm really big on collaborating with other people. So if someone wants to collaborate in the area, I would love to do that as well.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for taking every step that you've had to thrive. And then on top of that, just make people better and make the world a better place. We are better off for having you in our company. Thank you for being on the Cape Lead Revolution. And for everybody watching and listening, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you here next time. And this is Chachi reminding you to always educate, anticipate, and dominate. We'll talk to you soon.